On a cold morning over Western Europe in early 1943, German fighter pilots looked up and smiled. What they saw did not scare them. It looked big, slow and clumsy. It was not sleek like a Messerschmitt Bf 109 or elegant like a Focke-Wulf FWS-90. It was bulky, wide and loud. Many German pilots laughed when they first saw it climbing into the sky. Some even called it a flying bathtub. That aircraft was the American Republic P-47 Thunderbolt. Within months, the laughter would stop. By the end of the year, many of those same pilots would never come home, cut down by a storm of 50 caliber bullets. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. Bullets they never believed could reach them. The story of the P-47 Thunderbolt begins far from the skies of Europe, in the factories of the United States, at a time when the world was already burning. In 1940, as Nazi Germany swept across Europe, the US Army Air Corps knew it needed a new fighter. Combat reports from Britain showed that air combat was changing fast. Speed mattered, altitude mattered, firepower mattered, and pilots needed protection. The old ideas of light fighters were no longer enough. The man tasked with creating this new fighter was Alexander Kartveli, chief designer at Republic Aviation. He was an immigrant, quiet, serious, and deeply focused on engineering. Kartveli believed survival in the air depended on strength, altitude, and overwhelming firepower. From the start, Kartveli's design was controversial. The aircraft grew larger and heavier with every revision. When the first prototype, the XP-47B, flew on May 6, 1941, at Farmingdale, New York, it was the heaviest single-engine fighter ever built. Fully loaded, it weighed more than 17,000 pounds. Many officers doubted it. Fighter pilots were used to nimble machines. This new aircraft looked like a brute, but hidden inside that massive airframe was something special. At its heart was the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, producing over 2,000 horsepower. It was one of the most powerful radial engines in the world, and it gave the P-47 something few fighters could match: raw strength and high-altitude power. The Thunderbolt was built around that engine. Its large fuselage was not a mistake. It was a necessity. Inside, there was a complex turbo supercharger system that allowed the engine to breathe thin air at high altitude. This system, with its ducts and pipes running through the fuselage, was heavy and took up space. But it meant the P-47 could fight effectively above 30,000 feet, where many German fighters struggled. Early on, few understood how important that would become. The aircraft's armament was another shock. 8 Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing, with 3,400 rounds of ammunition. At the time, this was more firepower than most fighters in the world. German pilots were used to cannons and machine guns, but they underestimated what 8 heavy machine guns firing together could do. At close range, a Thunderbolt could put over 100 pounds of lead into the air every second. When those bullets hit, they did not just damage an aircraft, they tore it apart. In June 1942, the first P-47s were delivered to the US Army Air Forces. Pilots were unsure. Many complained about the climb rate and the size. The cockpit felt high and distant from the ground. Landing was tricky. The aircraft drank fuel. Some pilots openly disliked it. But training continued, because the war demanded it. By the summer of 1942, American air units were preparing for combat in Europe. The P-47 would soon face its true test. The first combat deployment came with the 56th Fighter Group, based in England. On November 15, 1942, P-47s flew their first operational mission from RAF King's Cliff. The skies were grey, the air cold, and the enemy experienced. German pilots had already fought the RAF for years. They knew the sky well. When they first encountered the Thunderbolt, they were not impressed. German intelligence reports described it as fast in a dive, but slow to climb. Luftwaffe pilots believed they could outturn it and outclimb it. Early encounters seem to confirm this belief. German pilots, especially veterans flying the Bf-109G and FW-190A, used vertical tactics. They climbed above American formations, then dived down, fired, and climbed away. In early 1943, several P-47s were lost this way. Some German pilots bragged about easy kills. They laughed at the size of the American fighter and mocked its pilots over radio chatter. But slowly, something changed. American pilots began to understand their aircraft. They stopped trying to turn with German fighters. They stopped climbing after them. Instead, they used what the P-47 did best. They used speed in a dive. They used altitude. They used teamwork. And when they fired with devastating effect. One of the pilots who truly understood the Thunderbolt was Colonel Hubert Hub Zemke, commander of the 56th Fighter Group. Zemke was calm, analytical, and deeply respected. He studied German tactics and matched them against the strengths of his aircraft. Zemke developed what became known as the Zemke fan, a tactic where P-47s would spread out at different altitudes, diving together to attack, and then climbing back up at high speed. German pilots who tried to follow often found themselves unable to keep up in the dive. The P-47 was incredibly fast downhill. Its weight worked in its favour. Once it started diving, it became a falling hammer. By March 1943, the Thunderbolt began to earn respect. On March 8, 1943, during a bomber escort mission over France, P-47s engaged German fighters near Saint-Nazaire. In that battle, several FW-190s were shot down. German pilots reported being hit from farther away than expected. The 850s allowed American pilots to fire longer bursts and hit targets at ranges where German cannons were less accurate. When a Thunderbolt got behind a German aircraft, the fight often ended in seconds. The psychological effect was just as important. German pilots who once laughed now hesitated. The Thunderbolt could take damage and keep flying. Its radial engine absorbed punishment better than liquid-cooled engines. Many P-47s returned to base with cylinders shot out, wings damaged, and holes everywhere. There are documented cases of Thunderbolts landing safely after losing entire sections of tail or wing. German pilots were shocked to see aircraft they believed destroyed still flying. One famous incident occurred on April 17, 1943, when Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson of the 56th Fighter Group was attacked by a German ace in a Bf-109 near Bremen. Johnson's P-47 was hit repeatedly. His aircraft was badly damaged, his canopy shattered, his engine was smoking. The German pilot pulled alongside and fired again, then flew away, believing Johnson finished. Johnson managed to nurse his aircraft back to England. Later examination showed over 200 bullet holes. Any other fighter would have fallen. The Thunderbolt brought him home. As bomber escort missions pushed deeper into Germany, the role of the P-47 became more dangerous. In mid-1943, American B-17 and B-24 bombers were flying daylight raids over heavily defended targets. Fighters were needed to protect them. Early P-47 models had limited range. They could not escort bombers all the way to targets like Schweinfurt or Regensburg. This led to heavy bomber losses. Critics again blamed the Thunderbolt, but the problem was not firepower or combat ability. It was fuel. By late 1943, external fuel tanks solved much of this issue. With drop tanks, the P-47 could fly longer missions. When equipped properly, it became a deadly escort fighter. German pilots now faced American fighters that could stay with the bombers longer and fight aggressively. Losses increased. The laughter was gone. By 1944, the Thunderbolt's reputation was fully transformed. It was no longer just a high-altitude fighter. It became one of the most effective ground attack aircraft of the war. After D-Day on June 6, 1944, P-47s flew thousands of missions over Normandy and beyond. They attacked tanks, trains, trucks, bridges and troop columns. Pilots loaded bombs, rockets and ammunition. The aircraft could carry up to 2,500 pounds of bombs, something unheard of for a fighter earlier in the war. German ground troops came to fear the sound of the Thunderbolt's engine. They called it der Jabo, short for Jagdbomber. The roar of the radial engine meant death could arrive at any moment. Pilots like Major Francis Gabby Gabreski used the Thunderbolt with deadly efficiency. Gabreski scored 28 air victories, many of them in the P-47, becoming the top American ace in the European theatre. He trusted the aircraft completely. He knew it could take hits and bring him home. German pilots still fought hard. The Luftwaffe was filled with skilled men flying excellent aircraft. But by late 1944, they were outnumbered, low on fuel, and facing experienced American pilots in powerful machines. The Thunderbolt played a major role in breaking German air resistance. Its 850s continued to do their work, cutting through wings, engines and cockpits with brutal efficiency. By the end of the war in Europe in May 1945, over 15,000 P-47s had been built. They flew more sorties than any other American fighter. They destroyed thousands of enemy aircraft in the air and on the ground. The aircraft that German pilots once laughed at became one of the most respected and feared fighters of the war. The P-47 Thunderbolt was never graceful. It never tried to be. It was built to survive, to hit hard, and to keep fighting. German pilots learned that lesson too late. When the 850s opened fire, there was no laughter, no jokes, no second chances. Only silence in the sky and the long fall back to Earth. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.